So we can't get away from the theme of addiction whenever we're studying the novel Jekyll and Hyde. It runs all the way through and is a key driver of the plot and the ideas of Stevenson. So just like normal, I'm going to go through the 4 points I would say in response to an essay on addiction, and I've colour coded my analysis so you can see where it fits in with what the examiner wants. Now, before we get into the nuts and bolts of the essays, it's important to remember that Stevenson was an addict. He was an addict of cocaine to help him with his back. It was a prescribed drug in those days, prescribed as a painkiller, but as we know, it's something that's highly addictive. So, Stevenson might be using Jekyll and Hyde as a representation of his own struggles with addiction. He is not understood or tolerated by society, and he can lead us into pain and agony against our choice. He also shows, though, that addiction begins from a naive belief we can control our impulsive desires. And he shows it's easy for a human to become addicted to freedom. So, the 4 points I would make in response to an essay on addiction. First of all, I'd mention how Jekyll first finds a pleasure and belonging in Hyde, a leap of welcome. That's the naivety I was talking about a moment ago. He feels that it's okay, he doesn't feel like it's a threat to him at the moment. However, the more Jekyll tries to limit his addiction, the stronger it grows. And the quote I've got for this is, "My devil has been long caged, it came out roaring." Then I'd look at how towards the end of our novel, Jekyll's addiction is eventually consuming him, and I've got the quote, "fell into slavery," and then finally it destroys him, and I've got dreadful shipwreck ready for that. So, paragraph 1, leap of welcome. So Jekyll first finds a pleasure and belonging in Hyde. When Jekyll first became Hyde, he felt like he belonged to him, shown by welcome. This shows how natural Hyde's behaviour is to us. He resides in us all, and we just choose to hide our Hyde, hence the name Hyde. Hyde at this stage was small and weak, so the suppression of his desires means he is not strong, but as he indulges his addiction, he gives Hyde power and strength and the ability to consume him. Now, the natural thrill makes Jekyll naively believe he can keep and indulge Hyde, demonstrating the misunderstood power of addiction, which is probably something that Stevenson was having to deal with when he was writing this novel. Now, the verb leap shows that the movement here is natural and instinctive, which reflects how natural and instinctive the emotion was. He instantly feels comfortable as Hyde. And the noun welcome shows that Hyde is welcoming him, which establishes immediately that Hyde is in control of Jekyll, showing that if we indulge our impulsive side, we give it power and control, and we can't break free from it, we become addicted to it. Then look at paragraph 2. "My devil has been long caged, it came out roaring." Really great quote, lots of analysis, lots of language analysis, which we'll get onto. So the more Jekyll tries to limit his addiction, the stronger it grows. This is symbolised by the fact he has to increase the dosage to remain Jekyll, and he begins to turn into Hyde against his will. Now, the beauty of this quote is the language analysis. So first of all, we've got the metaphor of devil. He associates his addiction with an image of hell, demonstrating that his addiction is like a painful punishment, as if he is in hell and being punished in hell. But then we've got the verb caged. So this reflects how society makes us limit our impulsive desires, tries to put it all in the cage, but they are only caged. So these impulsive desires can still be seen, and they need to be kept. They need to keep going. We can't just get rid of them completely. Then I'd look at the anthropomorphism of roaring. So he's comparing him to an animal. Now, this is a sound of aggression, which reflects the power and the violence of his suppressed addiction. But roaring in an animal is also a sign of fear and vulnerability. An animal will roar if they're scared for their life. So this is reflective of the terror Jekyll feels in his growing addiction and the intolerance of society towards him. He is not comfortable with his addiction at this point. He is afraid, he is vulnerable, and he's got no one to turn to because society will be intolerant of Hyde and intolerant of the fact that Jekyll keeps becoming him. So then on to paragraph 3, and we've got this quote here, "fell into slavery." So Jekyll's addiction here is now consuming him. Under Hyde's control, Jekyll is now appearing deadly sick. So this foreshadows his eventual demise because it says the word deadly, but it also demonstrates the physical impact of addiction, just like any addiction that we've seen or been a part of or experienced in our life. Now, the fact he uses the word slaves is quite interesting from a contextual point of view. Slaves are associated with the lowest class in society, so Jekyll is associating himself with such desperate poverty, outlining how society considers something like an addiction a lower class issue and something not befitting the top end of society. Stevenson is showing, and he's personally experienced, that this is just simply not the case, and it can affect anyone no matter where you are in society. Now, the verb fell connotes a helplessness, showing the helplessness of the addiction. He couldn't stop himself, and it was not a choice or free will. And then we've got the metaphor of slavery. Jekyll feels that he's a prisoner of his addiction and that he can't escape it. A slave also takes orders and follows instructions, which reflects how Hyde now has control over him and Jekyll is at his mercy. Finally, we use this quote many times before, "dreadful shipwreck." So Jekyll cannot survive his addiction, it destroys him. Jekyll is like a ship. He kept leaving the security of society, the land, but ships must eventually return to this, but Jekyll doesn't, and therefore his destruction was inevitable. Now the noun shipwreck implies a total destruction. They can't be saved. It's not like a car where if the wheel falls off, you put the wheel back on. If a ship sinks, it can't be saved, it can't be salvaged. So this symbolises how Jekyll's demise was total and unsalvageable. However, ships are also associated with adventure and discovery. So Jekyll believed he was on an adventurous discovery of Hyde, but it ended in disaster due to his addiction and denial. And this refers back to the naivety we referred to at the start of our essay. Now, if Jekyll symbolises Stevenson, this may reflect Stevenson's own struggles with addiction by now, and the feeling he too had hit rock bottom by the time of this novel. He may have felt like a shipwreck, unsalvageable, unhelpable, completely lost at sea, and no one understands him or can rescue him now.